Hey guys, Jason Emmett here. This is Rewind Toys. Look, in 1985, this toy line comes out and I wanted it so bad. Now, on the surface, if I just say squirt guns, you might be thinking, well, what's the big deal? But these were so much more than just squirt guns. These were Entertech. The look, the feel, the sound so real. That was their slogan. I didn't just come up with that or anything. Anyway, today we're going to tell you about them. Entertech was the name of the line of motorized squirt guns released by a smaller toy company who had kind of made a name for themselves by releasing lines from properties like E.T. Now, that was LJN Toys. The thing is, well, these squirt guns, they were extremely different than any squirt gun we'd ever seen before. To understand this mindset, you need to go back with me to the 80s, because the 80s were a time of war movies and action heroes. Consider that the Vietnam War had just ended in 1975, and so many famous characters from TV and cinema were vets. Magnum P.I., Crockett, Martin Riggs, the A-Team gang. We can't forget Rambo. So it isn't surprising that the fascination with such things existed. Also, factor in popular cartoons like G.I. Joe, and you'd start to see a trend. And LJN was about to figure out a way to cash in on that trend. So gone were the flashy, bright plastics. Now, these were made with black matte plastic to look, more realistic. And as I mentioned, they were motorized, so you could squeeze the trigger and the gun would do the rest. They had actual gun sounds, well, maybe not gun sounds, but sort of, and they had removable clips in some instances. They were awesome. And all the guns, save one, called the Enforcer shotgun, came with automatic pulsating fire and a 30-foot effective range. The first run offered 8 guns, and the second an additional 7 weapons. These included an M16, an Uzi, a Beretta, a grenade water balloon filling station, and a freaking RPG. Now, I mentioned Rambo. Well, Entertech, they launched Rambo versions of that RPG and the Rambo M60 with an ammo box and a freaking headband. So in all fairness, I didn't really want these because they shot water. I wanted them because they looked like real guns, and that was cool, but it was also part of the problem. The first issue was that the guns had been used in robberies due to how easily they could be mistaken for real weapons. Had this been the only problem, it likely wouldn't have hurt, too much, because, technically a robbery performed with a squirt gun would be less dangerous for everyone. The thing that wasn't safe, however, were cops. Cops encountering kids running around with realistic-looking guns. It all started with an incident in 1983, where unfortunately an officer shot and killed a 5-year-old child who pointed a TJ Hooker water pistol at him. That is, of course, one of the most tragic stories. But it's not alone. I mean, several officers were called by people who saw men with guns who were then, called out by police at gunpoint, only to discover the Entertech toys at play and not real weapons. Those incidents could have been worse, and parental focus groups were beginning to speak out. To help appease, LJN started placing a bright orange cap on the barrel of the guns. Now, that came about in 1987, so for collectors, that's a way to help date any Entertech you might find out of box. Towards the end of 1987, the beginning of 1988, they switched to neon-colored guns completely, which just didn't hit as well with the crowds for obvious reasons. Then in 1990, LJN was purchased by Acclaim, who began phasing out the LJN toy line and converting it into a second branch for their video games. Honestly, I didn't realize Acclaim ever did anything but video games. I mean, that's what they're kind of famous for. With that, they ended up selling the Entertech brand for just under $2 million. And eventually, The brand was dissolved entirely. Now, these bad boy toys, they are very much collected today. I've considered picking up one or two in box myself. Now, pricing depends on condition and which weapon you buy, obviously. Also, as of the recording of this, loose anywhere from $15 to $50 is what they're going to run you, and in box, well, $50 and up. And that was just for the guns like the AK and the Uzi. I saw a loose M16 selling for over $100. That was loose. And the only RPGs I could find at all were the Rambo ones, and they were even more than that. Anyway, how about you kids out there? Do you remember Entertech? Were you as into them as I once was? Drop your memories down in the comments. Also, make sure you subscribe down below for more vintage toy goodness. And until next time, when we come back to play in our toy box, remember, when it comes to Rewind Toys, the hunt, that's half the fun.